Welcome to the program today. My name is Mondo Gonzalez. I'm here in studio with Billy Crone. Welcome, Billy.
Hey, Mondo. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and we have a great topic today. It's something that is becoming well known, and we want to continue to address it in some of these prophecy updates. And that is the whole topic of the metaverse. Maybe this is new to you. Maybe you're not aware, but it's coming. It's not going away. And we have Billy Crone here to talk about it. And so, Billy, for those in the audience that might not understand Metaverse, what in the world is this? Kind of give us an introduction into what is the Metaverse.
Well, Metaverse, of course, is the latest buzzword that's all out there. And that's because a little while back, Mark Zuckerberg, people think coined the phrase, but he didn't. I'll get to that in a second. And he decided he's going to move on from Facebook, if you will, traditional Facebook platform, to this new Metaverse, shortened to Meta. And basically, it's the idea of going from a 2D interactive social media interaction platform like Facebook is to a fully immersed 3D virtual reality matrix scenario. That how it's pitched is it's not just going to be this ultimate way of escape, but it's going to become the new workplace. It's where you're going to do your shopping. It's just going to be a whole new universe, metaverse. But they say the benefit of that is because it's virtual reality, computerized, alternate reality, if you will, computerized, that you could be anything you want. You could be a male, a female. You could be tall, small, big. You could be a human. You could be an animal. You could be a person with 3 arms. You could be whatever you want to be. It's the ultimate dream, right? However you want to present yourself. And then you could build a life in there. And that's just more from the, if you will, escapist entertainment mindset. I just want to go do that. And believe it or not, people are already doing that in the gaming community. A lot of people don't know. Fortnite is one of the biggest ones around the planet with millions of users. And I think they're up to like 2 billion people that interact with that. But it's basically become its own universe. And people, when they get done working, they go and they play Fortnite and get into another reality. And they build a life in that, as crazy as that sounds. So that's the latest thing. And it's popularized because Zuckerberg came out and said that's Facebook's new goal, new direction, and things of that nature. And again, it's being pitched that you could do your work there. And it's going to be great because you'll be able to interact with people without having to travel in your business. And of course they say, well, isn't that going to be great for the climate? You'll have 0 carbon footprint because you won't need to get on that plane with all that exhausts out there and harming the environment supposedly, and you won't be needing your car because you can just check in whatever. And by the way, through the COVID issue, people are being learned on a massive global scale to stay at home anyway and do your work there. But again, it's also being pitched to, you could do your shopping there. So you've got an escape form, you got this, now it becomes a way of life, and it becomes an economic issue. And of course, they're looking at cashless Bitcoin technology, cryptocurrency, building that into it and all that stuff. And you're going like, well, that sounds kind of weird, kind of crazy, whatever, metaverse, whatever. Well, if you're going like, well, what's that got to do with me? Why should I be concerned about it? Which I think is a common sense question.
That's a great question.
Well, I think a couple different things. Number one, you need to do the research. And Mark Zuckerberg did not come up with this term. And when you realize where it came from, and then you begin to realize the real purpose of that. And when you understand the real purpose of that, now it should concern you, right? For a couple different reasons. The term metaverse was first coined 30 years ago in a science fiction book called Snow Crash. Before I got saved, my brother and I and my dad, we belonged to a science fiction book club, and I'd read voracious amounts of science fiction, so I was raised in that environment. But it's called Snow Crash, and basically the premise of Snow Crash was a dystopian society where basically the economies of the world crashed, and they were basically, for society to continue to move forward, they handed the reins over to some corporations, and then people's lives were drab and dreary and horrible, and so they checked into Metaverse. That's where it first occurred 30 years ago in the science fiction book Snow Crash, and that's how they escaped the harsh realities of living in that. Now, as crazy as that sounds, Spielberg in 2018, I believe, he came out. If you've never seen it, if you want to know where they're headed with Metaverse, go watch that movie, which I'm not condoning everything in that movie. the
Which
language,
movie?
I don't know what they're, it's called Ready Player One. And they're saying they're getting ready to come out with Ready Player 2. But it is a brilliant advertisement for what Zuckerberg is saying he's getting ready to do, this metaverse. And basically what it is that movie premise is a commercial for what they say is coming to the planet. It's not a science fiction story. This is where I'm going with this. It's really what these globalists are trying to build. And right now what we got going on with the Ready Player One, it's the same premise as that book. It's a dystopian society. It's drab conditions that people are living in. They're in these tiny little dwellings stacked on one another. It's just a horrible, rotten way to live. But how does everybody deal with it? They go home, pop on their VR goggles, and they go live the life they always wanted to live. Be anybody, whoever you want to be, and things of that nature. That was 2018. And, but now, fast forward to where we're at today with this thing called the Great Reset, the World Economic Forum, global corporations who are also on board with that, including Facebook and Google and Amazon. And these guys, what they want to do is to reset the economy. And basically, a lot of people believe that what we're going through with this COVID issue is a deliberate destruction of our economy, because that will give them the global excuse to reset it and basically bring in a one world economy, a one world government, a cashless society where people will be tied into that electronically. As Klaus Schwab said, the merging of the biological with the digital world, the matrix they're building. And of course, it's a new way to save the planet, et cetera, blah, blah. So the one world religion. And that's all the rise of the Antichrist kingdom that I'm convinced the Bible talks about. And but this is what they want to do. Now, my premise is, if you also look at this idea of a great reset, they also call it the fourth industrial revolution, that's why our economies, even here in America, are being what? Just like the book, deliberately crashed, and the corporations will take control, right? But that's going to lead to a rotten society. You know, you're going to be a worker bee for these guys, and it's going to be a drab existence. And so you look also at the Great Reset, that this is nothing new. Back several years ago, it used to be called Agenda 21. But it's the same thing. They've just been marching towards it. Their new, by the way, goal that they've set, whether they achieve it at that time or earlier, is 2030. That's their new goal, the global agenda, to reset the whole world into this image. But Agenda 21, basically what they want to do is just America itself. They not only want to tell you what job you can have, where you get to live, how many kids you can have, what you can eat, all that stuff for your good, they say, as crazy as that sounds. They want to basically rewild America and basically shove all the population over mainly to like the East Coast. I've got the actual map I've shared in other studies called the Biodiversity Treaty. And so basically people are stacked in these high rises, little places. And again, that's the premise of the Great Reset. You'll own nothing and be happy. It's like, what do you mean I'll own nothing and be happy? But it's okay, because we're going to give you a universal basic income. We'll provide with you a tiny house. I mean, haven't you seen that show, Tiny House?
Right.
Well, don't you want to save the environment? Small carbon footprint. It's all proper
Guilt
preparation,
shame, yeah.
right? Propaganda. And so then you're going to be stacked in this existence. You get to work for these global corporations because the economy crashed, but we're here to save the day. As crazy as that sounds, that's the premise of that book back in 30 years ago, Snow Crash, and that's what these guys are building. So here's my point. Just like the science fiction story presented, just like Spielberg's movie in 2018, Ready Player One, presented, that's your payoff for living in a shack stacked on one another, serving these global elites in a drab reality. At least when you get home, you can pop on and go into the metaverse. As crazy as that sounds, that's what Zuckerberg is building. Yeah. And then here's what's crazy. If you do the research, guess who's friends still to this day, and who also admitted they were inspired in building their companies with the science fiction writer of that book, Snow Crash. Zuckerberg, Amazon, and these same, at least, and Google, they admit. And some of them are still friends with the guy today. So you do the research, you know where this is headed.
Yeah. You know, when we hear, you know, we've talked about and written in our magazine other things just about, the 10 kings, or thinking about them as oligarchs or influencers in a variety of ways, and we'll see how the ultimate prophecy fulfills. But when these big guys who have world influence, when they begin to do something, we as Christians, we need to take notice that when the world goes left, we need to go right, and when the world goes up, we go down. What the world says do this, we by default we need to think in terms of the opposite. But when the world is presenting itself, and now as we're watching prophetically, that's why we're doing this as a prophecy update. When the world is shifting, and these world influencers are shifting in a certain way, and they're creating the metaverse, we need to take notice that these are systems that are going to contribute in some way to the final Antichrist system. One of the things I read last week, there was a woman, this is virtual reality. She went in, she was in there, she brought herself she immersed herself into the system. She was in there for a few minutes, and she basically was groped and accosted virtually by several people. It really traumatically affected her. She tried to get out of there as quick as possible to leave. She felt like, her words were, I felt like I was going to be gang raped by this guy in a virtual way. But it was interesting and it was sad, because she couldn't get out fast enough, and as she was leaving, they were hurling insults at her, language, etc. But she said, it was real. I mean, the effects of it psychologically were extremely real. Right. And so we oftentimes think, it's virtual, big deal, and we can maybe distance ourselves, but it's not necessarily that way.
No, it's not. And there, they say, like, just on general 2D, normal Facebook, other social programs, because it's going to converge to this, and I'll get to that, Lord willing, in a second, because people say, well, I'm never going to be a part of it. You may be forced to do it, and we'll get to that in a second. But the 2D scenario, Facebook, what do they say was right now? That social media is a detriment to young girls because their image, how it's being portrayed there, and it's not reality, but it's still affecting them, and you need to shut it off and get away from that. Also, the bullying, the shaming, and the cyber attacks and things of that nature people make on each other, and some people now it's getting to be like a crime, and you can be charged for that, and I'm not necessarily against some of that. But my point is, that's the 2D version, and how it can still traumatize people. Now immerse yourself into something that it's a true 3D immersion with everything you could think of, anybody, anything, anytime, whatever. And to me, it's just going to be sin magnified on a scale you can't even dream of. And if you think these things are harmful, the 2D versions are hurting people right now, you ain't seen nothing yet, right? Now let's go back to that aspect. So, well, I'm not going to be a part of this, whatever. What they're also saying as they're building this metaverse, which again is nothing new, go back 30 years ago, but they're saying that it's going to hit an eclipse point soon enough to where, maybe now it's a form of entertainment. But guess what? Pretty soon you're going to have to interact with the metaverse in order to continue your job, right? Or to continue to merchandise, buy and sell, and things of that nature, because that's what's being built in the system. You go, they can't do that. Well, think about it. Cell phones are not in the beginning, that was just a privilege, and only the rich people can afford that. Those big bricks, remember those days? Mm-hmm. But now everybody's got to have one. Even the little kids got to have one, right? And it's just now a necessity of life. And people's rationale is, so I can stay communicating with people, whatever. Well, this metaverse, they're saying the cell phone's going to go bye-bye. And the way you will communicate is metaverse. And the reason why is it says with cell phone, you still got to hold it in your hand, you still got to punch buttons and do whatever. Metaverse, it's hands off. Metaverse is going to interact with just your voice, right? And things of that nature. But it's going to become a new form of communication. Back to business. Business are saying it's going to become the way to reduce the carbon footprint. That you're going to have to now do your meetings in the metaverse. Right now, it's just entertainment, maybe an option. But because why? Saves money. Saves that carbon footprint. Because you're not driving around, right? Companies will go for it, I'm sure, because guess what? I don't have to pay for that plane ticket for my staff member or that corporation guy to fly over there to this meeting, or 5 people in the meeting, or to bring them all in for this, whatever. And again, we're being conditioned with that during this COVID thing. What? Not only working from home, interacting with the computer for business, but what? You don't travel. I don't even go to the office anymore. If I need a meeting with people in different states or different parts of the world in the corporation, what do? I Zoom them in. I Skype them in. We're all used to that. This is going to take it to a whole nother level. So they're saying, and they're admitting, that this isn't going to be just entertainment. It's not just going to be a form of escapism, like the science fiction premise. It's going to be much more than that. It's going to be the whole new way of interacting. So whether you think it's not going to affect you, I'm just not going to have a part of it, you're going to be forced into it, just like today. Have fun trying to exist in this world, including business, or even, dare I say, buying and selling, without a computer, without a cell phone. But Metaverse is going to replace all that, they say, and you're going to have to interact with that.
You know, as we think about, you know, just the whole prophetic scenario, and you know, the goal is to keep watching. And one of the things that I see as well is Jesus's words. You know, whether it's Jesus in the Olivet Discourse, Matthew 24, or in 2 Thessalonians 2, one of the characteristics, one of the key characteristics in the age is deceit. It's deception. Right. It's a lack of truth. They don't have a love of the truth. And so when we think about a prophecy update here, you know, one of the things that we're trying to do, as always, is to encourage you to be discerning, to pray for discernment, but also to be thinking about these things that are coming along. As Christians, ultimately we want to evangelize. That's our goal. How do you see this playing in as it relates to really the deception part?
Well, it's certainly a deception because, again, like with a lot of these guys, you just look at their track record. You know, just go Facebook. We can talk all day about Facebook, Amazon, Google, the whole 9 yards. These guys are lying through their teeth, right? Unfortunately. But Facebook, do they have a good track record of being honest? No. Oh, but hey, out of the blue, Mark Zuckerberg has turned a new leaf with Metaverse, and he's going to, from now on, be honest with the information and everything. Come on. They're extending the business model of lying and deceit, because that's the other thing that people are saying. Talk about deceitful. When you pop those goggles on, they're going to have a whole nother layer of information that they make money off of, okay? Not just in a 2D fashion, now 3D fashion. Because they also want to get this connected to your brain. They're going to be able to understand even your brain waves, things that they can never understand when you're just looking at a computer screen or your cell phone in 2D. In 3D, they're going to know that. And then if you begin to explore and start living a life you always wanted to live, but you would never do it on the 2D version and all that, they're going to know all that stuff. And so this is going to basically take their business model and put it on steroids. And you think that now they're just going to be honest about it? They're not going to use that to manipulate us? They're not going to use, excuse me? So it's obvious. Just follow the deceitful trail. I'm not convinced that these guys are going to stop.
You know, when you think about that, I just read yesterday that Metaverse, Facebook, is, at least publicly, they said they're considering pulling all out of Europe, because Europe has a little stronger rules against some of that data collection. Mm-hmm. And so they realize that if Europe doesn't bend, then Facebook's entire model cannot work there. How much more so, right? With this sort of extra data collection.
Yeah, now they're literally, no pun intended, they're inside your brain. Mm-hmm. Right? They can still glean your thoughts and stuff through your actions in a 2D, but 3D, I'm telling you, it's going to be on, and they know it. Yeah. And they're going to glean even more information off of us on a massive scale. And then that's the reverse effect, is they're going to be controlling, this is not some open source technology, they're going to be controlling this so-called metaverse. And so as you interact with that, which they're already doing in the 2D version, they're going to be controlling how you interact with that, who you interact with, what you're confronted with, on a scale that's much more highly suggestible and effective than just a 2D version, right? Like right now, you go search for something on Google, you're not getting true results. Google, it's on tape. They only give you the results they want you to get. Facebook, the same thing. YouTube, all these other big guns, you're getting a controlled narrative. Do you think they're going to stop that in the metaverse? No. And so they're going to continue that, but it's going to affect you a whole lot more. You think you're out there creating your own universe? No. They're creating a universe that they want you to interact with. Yeah. That's the lie. That's the deceit.
Yep. Billy, appreciate your time.
You bet.
Being here. And you know, we want to come and give you some of these shorter prophetic updates while we have guests in town. And Billy certainly has done his research in this category, and we'll continue to talk about it. But we appreciate you watching. As always, pray for discernment. I mean, the deceit doesn't just start in the tribulation period based on Jesus' word. It's a characteristic of the end of the age. And you have all these systems that are coming into place to really perpetuate it and to equip, again, these worldly oligarchs to continue their mesmerizing, using Billy's words. So anyways, appreciate you watching, and we will see you next time.